A Time magazine reporter who visited the home during Mitt's childhood described a typical morning, with George taking a pre-breakfast jog around the links or perhaps a fast round of golf. Shortly after Mitt's birth, George had been hired as an executive with the Nash Kelvinator Corporation, which later merged with Hudson Motor Car Company to become American Motors Corporation, where George served as executive vice president. In 1954, after the head of AMC died, George became chairman and CEO. He took over when the company was on the brink of bankruptcy. As Mitt would later recall it, his father took the money from the sale of their Detroit house and used it to buy company stock. "He literally risked his net worth on his ability to turn things around," Mitt wrote years later. Mitt recalled walking the factory floor with his dad, who would say, "We're going to make this company great." One of the keys to George's continued success was his ability to fight off a corporate raider who bought up shares of American Motors stock and seemed poised to try to sell off company assets and take a profit. In perhaps the most important business decision of his life, George embraced a proposal to focus American Motors on producing a fuel-efficient car, predicting that Americans would choose it over the gas-guzzling dinosaurs produced by larger automakers, as well as by his own company. Even Mitt questioned the strategy. "If Ramblers are such great cars, why doesn't everybody have one?" he asked his father one day. "People don't always recognize what was best," George responded, according to a recollection by Mitt's brother Scott. George was ahead of his time. In the mid-1950s, Romney's Rambler was touted as getting 30 miles per gallon. It would be several decades before the federal government required the average passenger car fuel efficiency to be nearly that high. American consumers living in a time of 30 cents per gallon gas, $2.41 in 2010 dollars, were beginning to realize the economic attractiveness of a compact car. George's embrace of the Rambler put American Motors on the road to profitability and helped make Romney wealthy and successful. It was a decision that had a lasting impact on Mitt, whose favorite pastime was discussing cars and business with his father. When Mitt announced his first presidential campaign, he arranged for an antique Rambler to be put on the stage behind him, underscoring what he called his family's commitment to innovation. Listening to his father, Mitt wrote later, "Didn't seem like listening to a businessman. It was more like he was on a great mission with American Motors to build innovative cars so that people could save money and fuel and have better lives. Work was never just a way to make a buck to my dad. There was a calling and purpose to it. It was about making life better for people." Mixed with the talk about cars and business was an ongoing emphasis on living the Mormon life. The Romneys were one of the Mormon faith's leading families. George had followed family tradition and regularly delivered talks at the local Mormon church, as well as at the dinner table. Unlike Utah, where George had spent most of his childhood, Michigan had relatively few Mormons, and members of the faith were widely considered to be outsiders. So, in a religion that relied upon proselytizing to grow its ranks, George urged his children to set an example of upholding the traditions of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Lenore also had deep roots in the faith. She came from a well-to-do Mormon family in Utah, but as a woman, she was not allowed to hold a leadership role in the church. The Mormon faith infused Mitt's life, and he was expected to be a leader from the start, immersing himself in theology and delivering sermons in his teens. When Mitt was 14 years old, he and his parents were featured in a story in the Detroit Free Press about Mormons in Michigan. A photo showed a Mormon teacher at the Romney home, instructing an intense-looking Mitt seated next to George and Lenore. The story noted that Mormons were one of the smallest and least understood faiths in the Detroit area, with only 4,000 Mormons living in southeast Michigan, and very few elsewhere in the state. The story, which ran in the months before George sought the governorship, was the first introduction of Mitt to a wide audience through the lens of his religion.